This was the last time I stepped into the ring as a professional back in 2024. But my journey in boxing started 14 years ago, at the age of 14, and I never dreamed that I would step into the ring even as an amateur boxer when I started, let alone a professional boxer. Now, boxing has changed my life completely in so many different ways and given me opportunities I never would have dreamed of. But I'm going to start off from the beginning, when I started boxing. Now, when I first walked through the doors of Epsom Mill Amateur Boxing Club, I was terrified. My friend had been going to the gym, and I played football, cricket, rugby and all those sports, but I was always interested in boxing. But the first time I went to the gym, I actually got so scared I went home and never followed through with it. I was in desperate need of some confidence, but I was too timid to go. However, it nagged away and I eventually turned up. And I was trained by a man called Lea Burroughs, who to this day still remains one of the most important figures in my life, because he taught me the basics and he introduced me to the sport that's changed my life. And once I started and I realised that I was in good hands, I was just hooked. And I've seen so many people in the years that I've been in boxing since do the same. You just have to get over that initial fear of going. And I started sparring, I started working on my skills. And ultimately, for the first year and a half, boxing was a puzzle that I just couldn't piece together. It was so difficult and it was so tough. And during those years, I took so many knocks. But ultimately, with good guidance and good people around me, I persisted and pushed myself to the max to have a fight. This was completely alien for me. At this time, I never even thought I'd be able to beat anyone, let alone go into a fight where the person wanted to beat me up. But I signed up because I was willing to take that first jump and push myself into it. This was probably around 8 months since starting, and I was so nervous, and this is a theme across my entire career as a boxer. I was terrified before every single fight. You know, there were times where I'd be in the locker room and I'd want to escape out the window and just run away or break my hand, just have an excuse to not have to go through with it. That's what the fear would do to me. And that's what the fear would do to most boxers, but most won't talk about it. But I was warming up and I was willing to commit for the first fight. Ultimately, the vest that I wore was too small, so I had to wear my coach's t-shirt. But ultimately, I stepped into the ring and just threw endless punches. It was just survival mode once I got in. And I won. Completely exhausted after 3 1.5 minute rounds, and I won. And then I was hooked and I stayed in amateur boxing. I fought consistently. And over a 5-year period, I boxed 26 times. I boxed the future Olympic bronze medalist, Lewis Richardson. Lots of guys that were going to turn professional and win titles in the pros. So I had a pretty good amateur career. I decided to turn professional at 21 years of age, and I applied for my pro license and it was granted. And within the first 18 months, I had 6 professional fights. Typically when a amateur turns pro, they'll have fights against journeymen just to condition you to the pros. It's a completely different game to the amateur boxing. The wraps are a lot harder, the gloves are a lot smaller, you've got no headgear, which when I was an amateur, you had to wear headgear. But not only this, pro boxing is a business and it's all about building up a fan base to sell tickets, because people don't realise, but you have so many expenses as a pro boxer. And this hit me hard when I turned pro. I went in a little bit naive. When it comes to paying your opponents, paying your manager, the promoters, you're going to have to cover about £3,000 to £5,000 expenses on these shows just before you start making money. And that's all through ticket sales. So it's very difficult considering tickets are priced at around £60 each. But ultimately, I wasn't boxing for the money. The reasons I started boxing were to gain confidence. And then ever since, it's really just been up in the levels, improving myself as a person, taking on challenges, and just going until the fire burnt out. So for the first couple of years, I was working alongside my boxing career. I worked in building sites, I was a postman, worked behind bars, used to sell gym memberships, I was a baggage handler at the airport. I'd done pretty much an array of jobs just to support my boxing career on the side. And then for me, it was time to take that step up. I'd had 6 fights, I was conditioned into the pros, and I signed for my first title fight. But then the COVID pandemic hit, which absolutely stopped my career for 2 years. Now, when it came to my fighting career, these years were a little bit of a blessing and a curse because obviously they kept me out of the ring, but I got some incredible opportunities in training and outside of my career in these years. I was able to train with my coach Adam Martin and Mick Guilfoyle, their stable, but I was also training every day with Mick Conlon, Josh Kelly, Harlem Eubank, Lea Burroughs, world level fighters, which ultimately took me to another level. But it was in these years that I really got an incredible opportunity to work in the Maldives and teach boxing to guests. This completely came out of the blue. This was just someone that had attended one of my fights, had just offered this to me. And it was on an island called Soneva Fushi. And I've been able to teach people from all over the world, including the likes of Millie Bobby Brown, Joe Wicks, and subsequently got offered to go to Switzerland to do the same. And these were all such amazing opportunities. And I started to realise that from putting myself out there, I would get these opportunities outside of the ring. But the fire was still burning within me to fight because I wasn't settled with what I'd done and I wanted to really push myself. I wanted to have that Gatti Ward-esque fight. I wanted to prove it to myself that I was able to do so in professional boxing. And then I got an offer to fight someone that I'd known for a very long time. His name was Lewis Isaacs, and he was a very good amateur boxer, and he'd had about 4 times the amount of experience as me in the amateurs. He had around 80 odd amateur fights. Now, honestly, Isaacs was someone I always had fear of because years earlier, his name was always brought up in the hardest punchers. Guys that I had boxed would say, man, that Lewis Isaacs is strong. And I'd seen videos of him knocking people out. So I knew he was good. He was undefeated. He was being backed by the promoters that were putting on the fight. And this is exactly what I needed. So I took the fight and I trained unbelievably hard. I pushed myself to the absolute max. Now, during these times, I realized what it was like to push yourself to those dark places and what's necessary to prepare you for a hard fight. It was originally supposed to be 10 rounds. And I trained 10 times a week for 8 weeks. We did 100 rounds of sparring in 5 weeks against the top pros with 30 seconds rest in between. Box Hill every weekend, 4 runs a week. It was just absolutely grueling. I hated every minute of this. But without that fear, I wasn't able to push myself to that same place. The fear drove me. And ultimately, when we stepped into the ring, I was so ready that it was the only fight I wasn't that nervous for. And in this instant, I learned that if you really push yourself to the absolute brink, it breeds unbelievable confidence. And the fight took place and it was an absolute war.
At the York Hall, and the first big shot lands.
Southern area title for both these two men. It's definitely Morley's.
All big their careers. It's a great opportunity and a good...
Isaacs. With a good punch.
Got from Morley though. He gets to work a little bit.
Has gone a little bit. He's cut there and he's getting.
Is that for a fighter like Morley, Glenn, who's catching Isaacs again with that left hand at will to seize
to Morley. That's a great body shot he's just dug in there.
Isaacs, in the opinion of Anthony Croller and Glenn McCrory, who know a thing or two about these fights. And Morley again, good, solid.
From Isaacs, being a bit too much of that, trying to look for the one big punch.
Good body
counter and pot shot him a little bit at times.
Well, Isaacs has come out for the 8th and final round with one mission. He knows he's well behind. He's going to put it all on Dan Morley now, and that's what he's doing. And Morley, well, if he stays out of trouble, he should surely have his arm raised at the end, we feel.
Bobbed and weaved.
Isaacs attacks, but Isaacs, he only...
Put on an excellent show here.
And now comes back with good work again. Fantastic action in this 8th and final round.
Well, this really has been an excellent scrap. Both men put in great effort.
Winner,
Now honestly, after that particular fight, the fire had burnt out in me. I had proven everything that I needed to know about myself, and the reasons that I started boxing were finished as a boxer. For me, boxing was all about improving my confidence, pushing myself, and proving that I could do what I didn't think I'd be able to do. But I had big things to do now. I had just broken through, had the big fight, so I pushed on for a few years. I'd also always wanted to box at the O2 Arena because that's where I'd watch my idol Gennady Golovkin box, and that was the inspiration for me turning professional. And after nursing the injuries from the Isaacs fight, I was lucky enough to get the opportunity to do so and box in my dream venue, which is where I had my last 2 fights. But ultimately that same fire wasn't there. The reasons I'd started boxing were ticked. So whilst I was still training and pursuing my fighting career, I began to build up my social media and looking into the older fighters throughout history and making videos about them. The decision to step away from being a fighter was extremely difficult because it becomes your identity and it's your routine. But at the start of 2025, I made that difficult decision and began to push my media career outside of boxing and continuing to train people of all ages all around the world, instilling the benefits and the confidence in boxing that can change your life and ultimately will change your life if you pursue it. Opportunities are now arising for me to do commentary whilst breaking down the fights live, whilst being able to attend ringside at the big fights, connecting with and being able to meet so many of the greatest fighters in the world that have inspired me so much in my boxing journey, and being able to collaborate with many of my idols.
People like Dan Morley in the UK, he does a great job with it. But there's not enough people out there that really can put this history forward, put this history out there for the younger generations to understand what it is that when I do these lists. And like I said, Dan Morley at the UK, he does what I'm doing.
And from all the social media stuff taking off, I've been able to write and release my own book about history's greatest ever fighters, which if you're interested in reading, I'll leave a link in the bio too.
Dan Morley, good afternoon, Dan.
Hello, Dan.
You've written a book, haven't you? I mean, it's is this your first book?
It's my first book. I basically just wanted to write a book on this particular subject.
Okay.
And probably the icing on the cake is having been able to meet my idol, Gennady Golovkin, and being able to show him all of the tricks that I was able to learn off him. I mean, it was just an incredible experience. Triple G was my absolute idol, and I learned so much. And when I showed him the videos of me mimicking his tricks, he was just so humble and appreciative. And for me, that was just an incredible experience. And there are just so many exciting new opportunities that constantly present themselves and continue to pop up. Now really, that's just a quick look at my story in boxing so far. But the reason I've made this video is because so many people ask me whether they should start boxing, whether it's worthwhile, whether they're too old or for whatever reason. And they'll have a particular fear that will stop them from doing that. And that's completely normal. And I would never encourage anyone to fight if they don't want to do it. It's too difficult without full commitment. But boxing will change your life. And every opportunity that I've had in the ring and outside of the ring all came from boxing, and I never anticipated that any of that would happen. Boxing instills so much confidence in you, and done so for me, to be able to go out and chase opportunities I never thought were possible. And so many doors will open once you step into that gym. Whether it's just for building confidence, you never know where it can take you. For me, when I started boxing, I had no real interest in it. My granddad had had one fight, and I was always aware of it, but never thought I'd do it. And ultimately I found boxing when I needed that push of confidence. It was solely just to learn how to defend myself. And all of these opportunities have opened up because I stepped through the gym doors. Boxing is so beneficial and can do so much for your life. And everything I've been able to get in my life has come through boxing. So ultimately, if you're thinking about starting boxing and you're procrastinating or putting it off, just go and do it. You never know what doors it can open for you. It's a brilliant sport. And at the end of the day, it can completely change your life.